My father's will said, forgive your brother, or lose everything. But I knew what my brother had done. The lawyer's words landed like a punch to the chest. Not because of the money, not even the condition, but because Dean was sitting across from me, nodding along like this was just another formality. A full inheritance, the lawyer repeated, folding his hands. The estate, all business assets, real property, split evenly. If, and only if, both sons agree to sign a declaration of mutual forgiveness. Public, legally binding. Dean leaned back in the leather chair, loose tie, expensive suit, that same empty confidence he wore the night everything changed. His eyes flicked to mine. Guess it's time we bury the hatchet, huh? Hatchet. He used that word like it didn't already have blood on it. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because I was back in our father's kitchen, 16 years old, barefoot on the cold tile floor, staring at the shattered ceramic bowl I had dropped. And my mom's voice, shaking. And Dean's voice, louder. And then nothing. I remember the silence that followed like it still lives under my skin. That night she disappeared. She didn't pack a bag. Didn't leave a note. Her purse was on the counter. Her favorite scarf hung by the door. And Dean, he just said, flat and fast, she left. Dad believed him. Of course he did. Dean always knew what to say. Always knew how to make people listen. He had a way of smiling, even while he was lying. But I saw the cut on his hand. I saw the blood on the hallway wall he wiped clean before anyone else woke up. And I saw the look in his eyes when I asked him where she went. She left, he said again. Forget it. Only I couldn't. I never have. The lawyer slid 2 copies of the statement across the table. One for each of us. Dean took his, scanned it like it was a menu, and laughed. That's it. Sign here, and we split 56 million? 56 million. Money that came from years of concrete and contracts, lawsuits and city council meetings. Our father's legacy. The company we were both supposed to inherit. But Dean didn't build any of it. He disappeared for 5 years, came back with a fake smile and a Porsche, and Dad welcomed him like the prodigal son. And I stayed. I stayed and worked. I stayed when Mom vanished. When Dad got sick. When the company almost folded. I stayed. And now I was supposed to split everything with a man who may have killed our mother. The lawyer looked at me. Mr. Merritt, would you like time to consider? Dean answered for me. He just needs to stop being dramatic. That's his thing. Always the martyr. I stared at the paper in front of me. Forgive. Sign. Smile for the cameras. Or refuse. Lose everything. And maybe, just maybe, drag the truth into the light. But what would that cost? Outside, the city buzzed. Traffic, sirens, the weight of people living their lives like today wasn't a day everything could change. Dean tapped his pen on the table. Look, Jack, we can keep playing the past tense blame game. Or we can both walk out of here rich and done with this whole mess. I finally looked at him. Really looked at him. He hadn't aged. Not really. Still the same pretty face. Same arrogant posture. But there was something in his eyes now. Something heavier. Like he knew the mask was slipping. You think I forgot? I said. But I didn't. His smile faltered. Didn't forget what? That Mom left? We all had to move on. She didn't leave. She vanished. And you were the last one to see her. He held my gaze for a long moment. Then blinked. Then smirked. You gonna accuse me of something, little brother? The lawyer shifted in his seat. If this is not a good time. It's fine, Dean said, pushing his chair back. Jack just needs to get his emotions out. Like always. I stood. My hands were shaking, but I didn't let them see it. You want my forgiveness? You're gonna have to earn it. He scoffed. By doing what? Pretending your ghosts are real? No, I said. By finally telling the truth. I walked out before either of them could say another word. In my chest, something burned. Not anger. Not sadness. Conviction. I wasn't just going to sign the paper. I was going to find out what happened to my mother. Even if it meant losing everything. I didn't go home after that. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just out. Away from the city. Away from Dean's voice. That smug smile. That signature waiting on a line like it was just ink and not 23 years of silence. I ended up at the old house. Dad never sold it. It sat out past the county line, just far enough into the hills that cell service dropped, and the stars came back at night. I hadn't been there in years. Not since Dad got sick and moved downtown to be closer to the hospital. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I let myself in with the key I swore I'd throw away 10 years ago. Everything was covered in white sheets and dust. The kind of stillness that makes you wonder if time itself forgot the place. I stepped into the kitchen, and it hit me like a punch to the chest. Same tile floors, same cracked backsplash by the sink. And there, in the corner where the morning light used to fall, the scarred spot in the wood from the night Mom disappeared. The place where I found the bracelet. Her bracelet. I crouched down, ran my hand over the floor. It was still there, faint, but real. I remember how it felt that night. Cold. Wet. A single drop of blood still on the clasp. I never told anyone I kept it. I hid it in the crawl space beneath the stairs, wrapped in a torn dish towel. And it was still there. When I held it again, I felt 16. Helpless. Afraid. And guilty. Because I did nothing. Because I let Dean lie. And I never asked why. My phone buzzed. No caller ID. I answered. Jack, Dean said. You walked out. We've got a month to figure this out. Don't waste it being dramatic. I didn't say anything. Come on, man. You and I both know Mom was already halfway gone before she left. She hated that place. She hated Dad. She wanted out. My knuckles tightened around the phone. You were the last one to see her, I said. A beat of silence. I told you. She left. She didn't take her purse. She was upset. She didn't take her car. Another pause. Then his voice dropped. What exactly are you accusing me of? I let the silence stretch. Let it sting. Then I hung up and turned the bracelet over in my hand. There was still blood in the clasp. It had been there for over 2 decades. And it was still there. I drove back to the city at sunrise, bracelet wrapped in a cloth on the seat beside me. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to sign anything. Not until I had answers. Not until I knew the truth. I held the bracelet under a desk lamp for 10 minutes, watching the dried blood catch the light like rust. It had lived in the dark for 23 years. Now it was speaking, softly, maybe, but it was speaking. And I was done pretending I couldn't hear it. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to since college. A guy named Joel. Back then, he was my roommate. These days, he ran a private forensic lab out of a tiny building sandwiched between a pawn shop and a dry cleaner. You still do hush-hush tests? I asked. Joel was quiet for a beat. Then, you paying in cash? Always. He didn't ask anything else. I dropped the bracelet off in a sealed bag the next day. Joel didn't even blink. He just took it, nodded once, and said, come back Tuesday. I'll see what I can do. Tuesday. That gave me 4 days. 4 days before I had to make a decision that could alter the course of 2 lifetimes, mine and Dean's. He called again that night. I didn't answer. Let it ring. Watched his name light up the screen and fade. The silence was louder than any voicemail. I didn't know what I was waiting for. Closure? Justice? An apology that would never come? Maybe just something to make me feel like I wasn't crazy. Like all these memories weren't just the byproducts of guilt and grief. Because that's what he always said. You just miss her. That night messed you up. Let it go. But I couldn't. Because some nights aren't meant to be let go. Some nights burn holes in you. Saturday morning, I walked into Dad's old office downtown. Still had the same glass desk, the same shelf of legal books he never read. His assistant, Grace, still ran the place even though the man had been dead for months. She stood up when she saw me. Jack, I need files. Old ones. What kind of files? The police report from the night Mom disappeared, and anything Dad kept off record. Her eyes narrowed. Your father didn't like digging up the past. Yeah, I noticed. She hesitated. Then she reached into the filing cabinet behind her desk and pulled out a slim brown folder. This is all there is. But you didn't get it from me. I took the folder and left without another word. In my car, I opened it. 3 pages. A copy of the original missing persons report. A statement from Dean. And a handwritten note from my father dated 2 days after she disappeared. She's not coming back. Let this die. We have to protect the company. Protect the boys. My stomach dropped. He knew. He knew, and he buried it. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by every photo I could find of her. Me and Mom at the beach. Her birthday cake with the lopsided candles. Her sitting cross-legged on the couch, arms crossed. That tired little smile that made everything okay. She didn't run. She disappeared. And Dean was the only one who saw her last. Tuesday came. I walked into Joel's lab, heart hammering so loud I thought he might hear it before I even opened the door. He didn't look up. Just handed me a single-page printout. It's human blood. Female. That was all it said. I stared at it. Could it be hers? You have anything with her DNA on it? A hairbrush? Old envelope? I shook my head. Then I can't tell you that. But it's not yours. And it's not Dean's. I thanked him. Paid in cash. Left. Back in the car, I held the report in my lap. Female. Human. Not mine. Not Dean's. And still, that tiny voice in my head whispered, it might not be enough. But it was something. It was more than anyone else had tried to find in 23 years. I turned the ignition, glanced at the unsigned forgiveness document still sitting on my passenger seat. It was time to pay Dean a visit. Dean answered the door like he'd been expecting me. Not surprised. Not curious. Just calm. Like this was some kind of reunion and not the confrontation it was. Well, he said, stepping aside. Come in. You want a drink? No. He shrugged. Suit yourself. The place was exactly what I imagined. High-rise, cold surfaces, expensive lighting no one actually reads under. Dean always liked to impress strangers more than make himself comfortable. He walked toward the bar in the corner, poured himself something brown and aged, and leaned against the counter. So what's this about, little brother? Still brooding over ancient history? I pulled the folder out of my jacket, dropped it on the table between us. That's Dad's handwriting. You remember it? Dean didn't touch the file, just glanced at it. Where'd you get that? Doesn't matter. Read it. He didn't. She's not coming back. Let this die. Protect the company. Protect the boys, I said, quoting the note. He rolled his eyes. You think that's proof of something? I think it's evidence of what we both already knew. He covered it up. And you let him. Dean sipped his drink. What do you want from me, Jack? You want me to cry? Fall to my knees and confess? This isn't a movie. I want the truth. You want a version of the truth that fits your guilt, that makes you feel better about sitting in silence for 20 years. I stepped closer. I was 16. You were 20. You were stronger, meaner, louder. You always were. His jaw tightened, just a flicker. You really think I hurt her? That I what snapped? Killed our mother? You're insane. No, I said. But I think something happened. I think there was a fight. I think she got hurt. And I think instead of calling the police, you and Dad made a decision. Dean slammed his glass on the counter. Stop. But I didn't. You left her somewhere. Buried her. Burned something. I don't know. But I remember the blood. The way you cleaned it. The way you told me to shut up and forget. Because you were a kid. Because you didn't know what the hell you were seeing. Then help me understand it now. He turned away. That was the first sign. Not the anger. Not the denial. The silence. He paced, jaw tight, hands clenched and unclenched. I watched him from the center of the room like I was watching the surface of a lake just before it cracked. I didn't kill her, he said finally, voice low. I didn't mean to hurt her. My chest tightened. What happened? She came at me, he said. She was screaming. I just told her I was leaving, that I wasn't staying in that house one more day. She grabbed me, said I was weak like Dad, said I'd never amount to anything. He exhaled hard. I shoved her. That's it. Just a shove. She slipped. Hit her head. I closed my eyes. He kept going. I panicked. She wasn't moving. There was blood. I called Dad. He came. He looked at her. Then he looked at me. And you know what he said? He said, you boys will not lose everything because of one mistake. Dean sat down, suddenly smaller. He wrapped her in a sheet. Told me not to speak. Not to cry. He made some calls. And by morning, it was like she'd never existed. I couldn't breathe. All these years. All the silence. All the pretending. And now it was out. I thought she hated me. I whispered. I thought she left because I wasn't enough. Dean looked up. She loved you. You were her favorite. That's why she hated me more. I picked up the folder. You need to tell the police. They'll charge me. They might. And Dad's legacy? Everything he built? Gone. It already is. Dean looked like he aged 10 years in that moment. I left without another word. Because I had everything I needed. The night after Dean confessed, I didn't sleep. Not even a minute. I sat on my living room floor, surrounded by silence and shadows, replaying every conversation I ever had with my father. Every moment I thought I was being protected, cared for, sheltered. But I see it now for what it was, control. He didn't just bury a body. He buried the truth. Buried my mother. And then turned Dean and me into living memorials for a lie. The next morning, I stood at the courthouse doors at 8:58 a.m., 2 minutes before they opened. I had the bracelet in my coat pocket, Joel's report in my other. Dean's confession was fresh in my mind, every word etched there like stone. I didn't record it. Didn't need to. I remembered. I remember everything now. But just before I stepped inside, I stopped. Because there was another option. I drove to the edge of town instead, to a small diner where the waitress still remembered my name even though I hadn't been there in 5 years. I ordered black coffee and nothing else. Then I called Dean. He answered on the first ring. You go to the cops yet? No. A pause. Then, why not? Because I want you to do it yourself. What? You heard me. You walk in, you tell them what happened. All of it. And I stay out of it. He laughed. A sharp, broken sound. You really think that's going to happen? No, I said. But it's the only way you leave here with any part of your soul. I'll go to prison. You should have thought of that before you let Dad turn you into a coward. Silence. I let it stretch. Then he said, What do you want, Jack? The company? The money? You want me to sign everything over to you? I want to bury Mom. He didn't respond. Tell me where she is, I said. That's all I want. Dean hung up. I didn't hear from him for 3 days. On the 4th, he sent me an address. No message. No apology. Just a GPS pin dropped in the middle of nowhere, 30 miles outside the city. An abandoned lot behind an old lumber mill. I went alone. The ground was soft. The kind of soft you only find where something was once hidden. There was no grave marker. No cross. Just a ring of disturbed earth beneath a cluster of thorn bushes. I dropped to my knees. And I cried. I hadn't done that since the day she vanished. Then I called the police. I told them everything. They brought dogs, ground-penetrating radar, cadaver specialists. And 3 hours later, they found her. A body, bones, wrapped in fabric that matched the couch from our childhood home. Hair still tangled in the fabric. A bracelet clasp rusted into her wrist. Dean was arrested that night, charged with manslaughter, obstruction, and unlawful disposal of remains. He didn't fight it, didn't plead, just stood there in court, eyes empty, hands cuffed, and said, I did it. I was afraid. I thought I could live with it. I was wrong. The news ran with it for weeks. Real estate empire built on family tragedy. Local mogul covered for son's deadly mistake. Missing woman finally found after 23 years. And in the middle of all that noise, I went back to that old house in the hills. I stood in the kitchen. I took out the statement of forgiveness the lawyer had given us. And I lit a match. Watched it burn. You never realize how much space someone takes up until you try to bury them the right way. It was a cold, gray morning when they released her remains to me. A plain wooden box, smaller than I thought it would be, labeled only with a number. For 23 years, my mother had been a ghost. Now she was a container. The funeral was small. Just me, a priest who didn't know her name until an hour before, and Grace, my father's old assistant. She came without speaking, without asking. Just held my arm as the priest mumbled through a prayer written for strangers. Afterward, we stood in silence as the box was lowered into the earth. There was no eulogy. What do you say about someone who vanished without goodbye? Who everyone pretended never existed just to keep the family name clean? I dropped a single rose onto the casket. You deserved better, I whispered. And I meant it. The next few weeks were a blur of court dates, media vans, late-night phone calls from distant relatives who all suddenly remembered my name. Dean took a plea deal. 7 years minimum. Could be out in 4. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. The foundation Dad had built crumbled faster than I thought it would. Clients pulled out. Investors vanished. Public trust went up in smoke the moment the headlines dropped. And me? I didn't want the company. I didn't want the estate. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life polishing a legacy built on silence. So I dissolved it. Every asset was sold. Every account closed. Half of it went into a trust for victims of domestic violence. The other half, I wired to a woman in Nevada named Ellen Grant. She was my mom's sister. Estranged. Cut off after a fight no one could even remember. She used to send postcards. Mom kept them in a drawer I wasn't supposed to open. Ellen called me the day the wire hit. You don't owe me this, she said. No, I told her. But maybe it's time someone remembered she had a sister. We talked for 3 hours. About childhood. About grief. About the way trauma travels like a virus, silent, generational, and persistent. I asked her what Mom was like before Dad. She was wild, Ellen said. She used to dye her hair red and dance in the kitchen barefoot. She wanted to be a writer. Did you know that? I didn't. No one ever told me. I started writing after that. Not stories, not confessions, just pages, fragments, pieces of a woman I barely remembered, stitched together with hope and guesswork. Maybe one day I'll turn it into something real. Or maybe not. But for the first time, I don't feel like I'm carrying a secret. I'm just carrying her. And maybe that's enough. 6 weeks after the funeral, I got an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photograph. It was old, late 90s probably. Grainy, faded. But I knew the people in it. Knew the way my mother tilted her head when she laughed. Knew the shape of Dean's smirk when he was still just a boy who hadn't learned how to lie yet. We were at a lake. I don't remember the trip. But the photo didn't lie. There we were. Mom in sunglasses, her arm around both of us, smiling like she didn't know what the future would take from her. There was a note on the back. You deserve better. But you were loved. Never forget that. E.G. Ellen Grant. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put it in a frame. It was the first photo of Mom I'd ever displayed in my apartment. That same week, I was invited to a charity gala. Someone had heard about the foundation donation. The women's shelter wanted to recognize me. I didn't want to go. Didn't want to wear a suit or smile for photos or accept praise for doing what should have been done years ago. But I went anyway, because I owed her that. The shelter director pulled me aside after the event. We're going to name the new wing after her, she said. Your mother. We want to know her name. I opened my mouth, then stopped, because for a moment, I couldn't remember if I'd ever heard anyone say it aloud since she vanished. Clara, I said finally. Clara Merritt. And just like that, she existed again. Not as a missing person, not as a cold case, but as a woman, a mother, a name on a building that would help people escape what she never could. Dean sent me a letter from prison a few days later. I opened it, read it once, then again. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an excuse. It was a list. Names, dates, locations. He'd finally told the truth, the whole truth. About where they buried the documents. About who Dad paid off. About the contractor who helped move the body. The cleaner who came at dawn. The shell companies that funneled money into silence. I handed it all to the authorities. They reopened everything. 3 arrests were made within 2 weeks. And the rest? They're still unraveling it. Still chasing the ghosts of powerful men who thought they could make history forget. But some of us remember. Some of us never let go. One night, I took the last piece of the company's old stationery, a gold-embossed letterhead from Merritt Holdings, and I wrote a single sentence on it. This legacy ends here. Then I folded it. And I burned it. The last time I stood in front of a Merritt Holdings property, I didn't feel proud. I felt sick. It was the tower. The original. The one Dad broke ground on when I was 10, dragged me up a scaffold in a hard hat too big for my head, told me, someday this will be yours. Now it was sold. New name on the lobby plaque. Same cold walls. Same scent of money and fear and men with polished shoes stepping over their conscience. I stood in the lobby and looked around. A receptionist stared at me like I didn't belong. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I never did. I wasn't there for closure. I was there for her. There was one last thing I had to do. Upstairs, the 24th floor, used to be my dad's private office. Now it was vacant. The new owners hadn't moved in yet. I still had a key. God knows why. I slipped in, locked the door behind me. The room was bare. Echoes where furniture used to sit. But I knew where to look. Under the windowsill, 3rd tile from the edge, Dad's hiding spot. I pulled up the panel and found it, a metal lockbox. Inside, tapes. Old cassette recordings. Legal depositions. Private conversations. The kind that didn't belong in daylight. And one more thing. A letter. Addressed to me. Jack, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And everything I built is probably burning. Maybe you lit the match. Maybe you stood back and watched. Doesn't matter. The result's the same. You want the truth? Here it is. I knew what Dean did. I helped him bury it. Not because I hated your mother, but because I loved him. Because he was weak and I was scared, and your mother, she was fire. And fire either warms you or burns the house down. You always saw things too clearly. That made you dangerous. So we made you quiet. And I'm sorry for that. I hope, in the end, you made noise. Dad, I read it twice. 3 times. Then I left it on the floor. Some ghosts don't deserve to be carried. That night, I met Ellen for coffee. She was in town, helping the shelter open its new wing. It's beautiful, she said. She would have loved it. She never got to see herself as someone worth naming something after. Ellen put her hand over mine. But you did. We sat there a while. No rush. No script. Just blood learning to find itself again. What are you going to do now? She asked. I thought about that. For a long time. I think I'm going to build something, I said. Real estate. No. Not buildings. Stories. She smiled. And I knew what she meant. What Mom would have said. Start with hers, Ellen said. So I did. I wrote her name. Clara Merritt. And I kept going. Some legacies are built in boardrooms. Mine began in a library. Not a fancy one. Just the back corner of a public branch off Maple Street. It smelled like dust and dreams. Cheap carpet. Worn armchairs. A printer that screamed every time someone tried to use it. It became my sanctuary. I started going every day. Same time, same chair. Ellen sent me boxes of old journals, photos, notes Mom had written to herself. I read them all. Pieced together a life from fragments. A woman who wanted more, dreamed bigger, and never got the chance to say it out loud. So I said it for her. The story took shape slowly. It wasn't just about what happened, the night she died, the lies we told, the empire we built on silence. It was about survival, about the weight women carry, about what happens when truth gets locked behind family pride. I titled it, Clara. Publishers fought for it. By the time it hit shelves, the headlines had already faded. Dean was serving his sentence. The company was gone. But the book lit a fire. Interviews, op-eds, panels. People wrote to me, told me about their mothers, their sisters, their guilt, their silence. It was more than I ever expected. I took the money and started something small. A foundation in her name. Not just for shelters, but for voices, for truth tellers. Kids writing their way out of shadows. Women recording their stories before someone else tried to rewrite them. One morning, I found a letter on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a note. Handwritten. Familiar. You told the truth. You paid the price. I hope you sleep better now than I do. Dean. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I lit a match. And let it go. Some pain doesn't need to be archived. Months later, I stood in front of a crowd at the Clara Merritt Center's opening gala. Same suit from the funeral. Same tie from the trial. I told them a story. Not the whole one. Just a piece. About a woman who made cinnamon rolls every Sunday. Who smelled like lemongrass and wore red nail polish even when she was just cleaning the house. Who danced when she thought no one was looking. I told them her name. And I watched the room remember her. Together. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't bring back the dead. But it does resurrect something. Hope. It's strange how grief changes shape. At first, it's a fire. Then a bruise. Then a quiet seat at every table you sit at for the rest of your life. I didn't expect peace. But something close found me anyway. The book tour ended. The foundation grew. I started teaching workshops, not on writing, but on memory. On truth. On how to pull stories out of places where people tried to bury them. One night, after a class, a teenage girl came up to me. My mom read your book, she said. She left my dad after. We're in a better place now. Thank you. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. Because that was the point, wasn't it? To be the noise. To make silence impossible again. Ellen and I stayed close. She sold her house in Nevada and moved east, got an apartment 2 blocks from mine. We do dinner on Sundays. She insists on cooking. Says it's how she keeps Clara alive. She burned everything she tried to bake. Ellen laughs. But Lord, she tried. Some nights, I write. Other nights, I just sit by the window and listen to the world go quiet. Not empty, just still. I visit the shelter wing sometimes. The plaque still shines. Her name is still there. Real. Permanent. Clara Merritt. Not erased. Not forgotten. Dean will be out someday. Maybe soon. I don't know what I'll say to him, if anything. Maybe nothing needs to be said. Maybe the silence between us is the last piece of the punishment. Or maybe one day we'll sit in the same room again. And remember. But for now I live. In a way I never thought I would. Without weight. Without guilt. Without secrets clawing at my throat. Sometimes I talk to her. Not out loud. Not in some ghostly way. Just in me. In the places she left behind. When I finish a story, I whisper, did I get it right? And sometimes, I swear, I feel warmth in the room. Like maybe, just maybe, she's still listening. And smiling.